Sorry, Jean was talking to me. What was that?
I said, this final form of the agenda, it had your additions.
It did not. That was sent before those additions came in. So in the agenda, when we get to that point, I'll add them.
I'm sorry?
I'll add them once we get to that point of the agenda
Okay.
to adjust the agenda.
Good enough. Okay. Well, we've got a couple of minutes yet.
Come on, guys. Come on. Kimber. Let's go. Come on. Come on, guys.
Her dogs always sound so vicious.
Come on, guys. Let's go. Kimber.
Okay, it's 10 o'clock. We'll call the meeting to order. Suzanne, you have a flag handy, or can you do the prayer and pledge?
I can. I don't have a flag handy. I can just pretend.
Ken.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Let us pray. Heavenly Father, we come before you today. We thank you so much for the opportunity to be here one more day to praise your name in the presence of the enemy. We pray that you'll be with us and watch over us. We pray that you will fill the rooms with your presence so full that there's no room for evil. We pray that you'll watch over us, that you'll watch over the county, or the people within it, the visitors, the residents, and the employees. In your name we pray. Amen.
Amen.
Okay, roll call.
Commissioner Knopsker,
Present.
Commissioner Bothell,
Present.
Commissioner Glover,
Here. Okay, adoption of the agenda. Are there any changes, additions, or corrections to the agenda?
There is. Underneath consent, I'd like to add a road and bridge wire. This is a regular payment that just needs authority to do the wire. And then also we received very last minute the renewal for the Hess District insurance. This year we actually got a much better deal. The coverage is doubled and we're paying about 3/4 of what we have in the past years.
What's the road and bridge wire for?
So it is going to Suncor.
That is
Energy.
oil for the pavement.
Correct. This is a regular purchase. They only receive wires. It's the treasurer's procedure that it must be approved by a commissioner to do a wire.
Okay.
In addition, so that was under consent. Underneath Board of Health, we have the contracts for our new contact tracers. There are 3 of them who signed. I did send you those contracts. I sent you 1 copy of them. It's just each individual volunteer has signed it, and it also requires your signature. And we also have the child fatality grant contract for the upcoming year. That is a multiple year contract, and they just amend the dates each year.
Okay, thank you. Are there any other additions or changes to the agenda?
That's all I have.
Okay. Commissioners?
I move that we approve the agenda as amended.
Jean,
We have a
you're not
motion.
coming through. I hear you from the next room, but
Do we have a second? Do we have a second to Gene Glover? Okay, Commissioner Glover. Okay, are there any objections, corrections, or anything else? Hearing none, the motion to approve the adoption of the agenda is carries. Approval of minutes from the previous meeting. Suzanne, I see that you made some changes to the Board of County Commissioners meeting on the 10th.
I did, and after a comment in the newspaper, I'd like to clarify that the changes the changes that I've made are either to clarify a point, grammatical, or spelling.
Thank you. And then also we have the 6-3 Board of Health, 6-10 Board of Health. Do we have any changes to those? We can approve these one at a time if you would prefer.
I didn't get those looked at.
Okay, I didn't.
So I don't know if anybody else has
Nothing
it.
jumped out at me on those, but that doesn't mean anything. And right now I'm having trouble finding it because I'm looking at the latest commissioners meeting minutes.
so we can move those to next Wednesday, and that'll give everyone an opportunity to review. I know we're not exactly used to going over both sets of minutes all the time, so.
And I neglected that.
All right. Okay, so then we'll take a motion to approve the Board of County Commissioners meeting minutes for June 10th, 2020.
I move that we approve it as amended. And there's your second.
Dean did a second. Okay. We have a motion and a second. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries. Then if the commissioners concur, we will move the Board of Health minutes approval for those 2 dates, 6-3 and 6-10, to our meeting of next week. Oh, so we have a chance to review those. Got a motion on that one. Jean, Suzanne?
Second.
Suzanne seconds it. Any objections? Hearing none, motion carries. Okay, public comment period. Now's the time for the public to weigh in. 3 minutes for presentations. No action will be taken. Are there any comments from the public? Comments or questions? Hearing none, we'll move on to the consent agenda. We have 5 items on there now. Ambulance approvals for South Fork, Center, and Del Norte, road and bridge wire to Suncor, and renewal of the pest district insurance.
I would move that we approve the consent agenda.
We have a motion by Suzanne Bothell, second by Commissioner Glover. Are there any objections? Hearing none, the motion carries. Moving on.
John,
Yes,
excuse me, if you wouldn't mind, if you're not planning on coming into the office today, I'd like authority to get those signed for you.
I'll try to get in. I'll give you a call after the meeting and let you know if I'm going to make it. Otherwise, you can use electronic signatures.
Okay?
Okay, moving on to county official and department head reports. Are there any?
There are none.
None. Moving on to general business and administrative items. Are there any items under that category?
There are
Again,
none.
hearing none. Then we'll move on to public health business, including Board of Health. We are setting as commissioners and the Board of Health for our resolution. Trish, if you would start with the Healthcare Coalition discussion, please.
Okay, so I have two things on this. One is that we are coming up on the new grant year, and we would need to, we don't need to decide today, but we definitely need to begin thinking about it for our last meeting of the month is who is going to be our representative. Currently, Diane is the alternate. Paul has been attending those meetings, but we do need an official representative for the Healthcare Coalition Steering Committee. I have checked into it. There is no reason why it can't be a member of the Board of Health, or it could be someone from our public health. It would have to be public health related.
Have you talked to Paul about if he's interested and if he would have time?
I know that the grants aren't necessarily his forte. I have not discussed that with him. I know he's kind of learning the grants a little bit now. You know, he's mainly COVID. He's concentrating on COVID right now. So I don't know that he would have that time, but we can certainly ask.
And that just, when does that need to be done?
The grant ends on June 30th.
And so we
it
need
goes
to have
the new
somebody
year.
by then? Okay.
Correct.
June 24th would be the date. On the Healthcare Coalition Steering Committee, how many people are on that? Or how many are represented?
I believe it's 11 total. They break it up between hospitals, east and west of the San Luis Valley. So I think the ideal situation is that every county has their emergency manager and a public health member who are in that committee. Some of them are then voted to co-chair. Out of that group, everyone that's on it, then there's 2 people or 3 with the hospital that get voted to co-chair.
Okay, Trish, and for clarification, as I understand that Rio Grande County is not only the fiscal agent for the Healthcare Coalition, but they are also the prime contractor for this grant.
Correct.
So the Healthcare Coalition is not a contractor, the county is.
Correct.
Okay, thank you. So I guess we need to think about appointment. Are we having a work session on Monday?
Yes. That work session will be the group of municipalities for the CARES funding and then also the airport. If we could add this to that as well, if you like.
With the consent of the other commissioners, I would suggest that we take this up on Monday in our work session.
I think that'd be appropriate.
And a thumbs up from Commissioner Glover. Thank you. Okay, then, Trish, I see the next item under the Healthcare Coalition discussion is there are apparently issues with the Healthcare Coalition grant. Would you share that with us?
Sure. You did touch on it a little bit. So it was reported to me that the HCC steering committee has been told that they are the contractor under the CDPH grant. Therefore, that allows them to hire additional contractors that forces us to pay. As if they hire it, we're the ones that pay, and we do not have a contract with anyone other than Cynthia. The issue is the steering committee has voted to hire Emily, and in light of, as a result of that, she's actually trying to access shared drives off of Rio, trying to get access to. She's contacted a number of people trying to gain access to shared drives in our computer system.
I hear three issues there. One is that the steering committee, well, maybe it was two issues, is trying to hire people, and these positions, one may not be even covered under the grant at this point. Would that be a correct statement?
We can hire additional contractors specifically to do particular deliverables. That is funding in that grant. I don't know about, we have 2 weeks left. That would be an awful lot. But certainly anyone who contracts to finish those deliverables has to have an actual contract with Rio Grande County.
Okay. Secondly, if I recall, there may be an extension on some components of the Healthcare Coalition grant.
Yeah, so they have allowed the fourth quarter deliverables to move through the next grant year. Instead of being due June 30th, it is now going to be due, the fourth quarter is due on September 30th.
September 30th.
Correct.
And why are we having to request an extension?
Up until this week, we did not have any of the expenditures requested for reimbursement, and the quarterly report was not done. So that's why we have Tony, who has just completed January through May.
Okay.
Of course, we haven't done June yet.
For the names, for the minutes, when we refer to Cynthia, we're referring to Cynthia Ford. What is her position?
She is the HCC coordinator. She has a contract with Rio Grande County to finish and finalize and do all those deliverables within the grant.
So does she function as a grant administrator?
They refer to it as coordinator.
Okay.
The administrator would come from this office.
Okay, and the administrator, though, would be the
From Rio
person who
Grande.
was delegated or had assumed the responsibility for seeing to the proper administration and timely submission of reports and requests. And who was doing that?
It was a combination between Emily and Tony. Tony was doing it. However, she was having issues getting things approved in order to get the invoices completed.
So the problem was the person that was administering this was the information was not coming from them in a timely fashion.
Correct.
Is that a correct statement? Okay, and also clarification for the minutes, when we refer to Emily, that is referring to Emily Brown, who was our former public health director. She no longer is our public health director. Moving on to the next point, and other commissioners, you can weigh in on this. It's my understanding that the steering committee has taken it upon themselves to somehow continue a relationship with Emily Brown, and that relationship has not been approved by the county, and Emily Brown was on the Healthcare Coalition by virtue of her position with Rio Grande County. Is that a correct statement?
Correct. Every member has to be assigned to an entity that relates to either hospital, emergency management, or a healthcare facility or clinic. So a single person cannot be a part of that committee. They have to be assigned to a healthcare or emergency entity.
Okay, healthcare entity, but also would that, I assume a healthcare entity would refer to a medical facility, whereas we have the county, she was there from the county, representing the county at that point. Is that correct?
Correct. She held a co-chair position. So there are 3 co-chairs. One is a representative from the hospital. The other two are from Public Health from east and west of the San Luis Valley. So Emily Brown represented Public Health from the west. Chris Rodriguez is the representative from the east.
Okay, we just had a chat from Eva Timberlake, who said Emily Brown is a board member for the Rio Grande Hospital. It's my understanding the Rio Grande Hospital already has a representative on the steering committee.
Correct. Ted Anderson, as co-chair is Ted Anderson, and then under the steering committee, it is Arlene, who Ted is her alternate for the steering committee as well.
So Emily Brown's position at the Healthcare Coalition was as a representative of Rio Grande County, and she no longer is employed by Rio Grande County. Therefore, that position would be assumed to be vacated at this point.
Correct.
Ryan, are you on?
Yes, John,
Your
and
comments
I would
on
concur with that. I don't have comments, but I do have a couple questions if you don't mind me asking Trish or anyone who has information. I guess as I reviewed the governance documents of the HCC, I don't see that HCC, other than being a network of organizations involved in healthcare, is actually a legal or any other type of recognized entity that would have the ability to contract on its own. Is that correct?
Yeah, they definitely do not. The contract is between Rio Grande County and CDPHE.
And as John already pointed out, that's because Rio Grande County is the fiscal agent.
Correct.
Okay, and so HCC doesn't have any independent ability to hire employees of its own, correct?
No, they
Okay.
do not.
So there'd be no way for HCC to obligate third party, particularly a local government, to contract with anybody, be it Emily or somebody else.
Correct.
Okay. I just wanted to make sure I'm understanding the makeup. I had reviewed those documents, but wanted to make sure there was nothing else that I was missing or needed to be made aware of.
Right.
that. So apparently we need to address this with the steering committee at HCC. I would assume either our attorney or administrator would help clarify this issue.
Yes, and I'm willing to do that. And then whether it's appropriate now or in a more confidential forum, I don't know, Trish, if you have additional information on the access to the files, what it means when you say that she being Emily Brown is attempting to access Rio Grande County files. I don't know if it's appropriate now to expand upon that.
So they are Rio Grande files that are in our computer system. There are shared files between Cynthia Ford and the co-chairs of the HCC steering committee. It would allow, those files contain work that would allow a contractor, whether Emily Ford or Emily, to continue the work for the grant. So being that they did come to that decision to contract her, she's trying to fulfill that contract, that the contract doesn't exist, but trying to fulfill it. And she's calling multiple people from Rio Grande County, trying to gain access to those shared files.
Okay.
If I can, go ahead, Ryan.
Do I understand that she, in her individual capacity, is trying to meet the deliverables that are the responsibility of the county?
Correct.
Okay. Then I want to make sure that it's very clear to county employees that no matter who it is, they should not be granting access to outside individuals, even if documents were created by an individual. They were created in furtherance of the county's obligation pursuant to that contract, and any documents, any files, any records would be property of Rio Grande County.
And I have taken that step, and the ones that have been contacted have let me know, and therefore reminded them they cannot share those. I went a step further and made sure our contracted employees Cynthia Ford is also aware. She then told me that there is a off Rio Grande County site through CDPHE, another form where she could do business for HCC. Cynthia Ford and Linda Smith are the two people with access to that state website, and Cynthia has also reminded Linda Smith that that's not acceptable either. So
Okay.
hopefully she doesn't have access to that as well.
Two points here that I have. One is Emily Brown is not authorized to represent anybody in terms of dealing with this contract that's Rio Grande County has with CDPHE. Secondly, any attempt to access county computers and storage devices by any unauthorized person brings up another issue. And as we all well know, that if that information, or if people do access it, there's a potential for accessing a portal into other areas of the county, including confidential information. And that's a IT security issue. We pay quite a bit of money a year to make sure that sort of thing doesn't happen. And it would seem to me that this attempt crosses some lines that could be fairly serious, either ethically or legally. And Ryan, I would ask you, how do we best deal with this situation? And I'd ask the commissioners separately, or also, is this something we want to bring our IT security team in on and make sure that nothing has happened that's inappropriate or threatening to the county?
To answer the second part of that question, I think that it probably would be appropriate to bring Tyler Tobin in and find out if there's anything that has been breached. With regard to the first part of your question, I probably need more additional specific information, and I'll get with Trish to figure out how best to advise the commissioners going forward.
Commissioners, do you have thoughts? Suzanne, you're muted.
I do think it would be appropriate to check with IT and make sure that nothing has happened. This is something that could be nothing, or it could be really bad. It just, you don't want it to be the really bad.
Okay, last time we had to get Tyler Tobin to come in to advise us on a potential. And so we'll have to decide we're going to spend that money. Concerned about the possible legal ramifications of this. And I'll leave that to Ryan and Trish personally to in the meantime, Ryan, as I understand, you will also be drafting some correspondence with the HCC steering committee, advising them of the relationship and make it very clear. And further on that, we would also advise that this is my opinion, commissioners can weigh in on this, and the administrator, any sharing of this information, passwords or access by any county employee to an outside person is an action that's subject to immediate termination. Ryan, your thought on that?
I 100% agree with that. And yes, I will be following up with correspondence to the steering committee to define what our respective roles are and how to go forward from here in terms of who will be sitting on that steering committee on behalf of Rio Grande County.
Thank you. The commissioners, I know, Gene, you're having trouble with your audio.
You're
Yellow.
muted now, Gene.
Hi?
If you wanna- He's muted now, where it didn't show him muted before. I don't know if you want to try it.
Gene, if you can weigh in, your thoughts on this?
I hear you from next door, but not through the computer.
What if you called in addition?
Did he say yes?
I don't know. Trish, do you know what he said?
I
He's
don't,
gonna
I
try
didn't,
to
I don't think he said
he's gonna-
anything.
Sorry, he's going to try to use my computer. Just a minute here.
Okay.
Thank you. Okay, while we're waiting for Gene, Suzanne, your thoughts?
I've lost track of what our last, where we were. Is I think that we do need to make sure that everybody understands how this process works and that county information is county information.
And do you concur with this would elevate to the level of terminating an employee who allowed somebody to breach you?
I believe so.
Okay. And I'm waiting for Gene.
Okay, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay, my thoughts are,
Now we don't hear you.
what happened?
We hear you now.
Now you do.
I
Don't
think
sit
we-
too close. You go away whenever you get closer, I think.
That's why we should be in this room together. We could talk to each other and make it a little simpler. But anyway, I think we ought to go ahead and follow our procedure through IT and have it all checked out. And I think we need to make sure that we haven't been breached, that nothing's been done wrong or whatever, or has, whichever the case is. Everybody involved needs to know where they stand. And then we need to make sure everybody knows we did our due diligence. It wasn't just a witch hunt.
Okay, so if I'm hearing you, the commissioners correctly, it is our consensus, unanimous consensus, that Trish, as our administrator, and Ryan Dunn as county attorney, will take the appropriate steps to inform the county employees of the nature or of our position on sharing information or access to our computers. And that we will also contact our IT specialists to see if there has been any hacking into our system or access to files, inappropriate access to our files. Head nods?
Yes.
Yes?
Yes.
Okay. Trish, is that clear to you where we are?
It is, with the exception of, so I do know that Cynthia is prepared to create a special meeting for the HCC steering committee for me to try to explain to them and show them that we are the contractor and just clarify a lot of that relationship between Rio Grande and why they can't hire someone. We're a little bit of a time stretch where a lot of this has to be situated by the 30th of June. And currently, from the last correspondence I saw from between the steering committee and Emily, we have a lot of problems with these stipends. CDPHE will not approve the stipends as they've been used in the past. And the last email correspondence explained that Emily is trying to increase them in this work as the contractor. We cannot increase them. So I would like to get some of this clear sooner than later and see if you would like to direct me to attend that special meeting for the HCC steering committee and just try to clarify some of this.
I think that would be very appropriate.
As I understand, we've already said that Ryan Dunn and Trish Slater will coordinate, get the letter or something out to the steering committee quickly. And then the steering committee is setting up a meeting, which Trish will attend and help further clarify the relationship between the county and the healthcare coalition. With reference to the stipends, that's almost a separate issue. And it's my understanding, based on what came forth last year when stipend checks were issued to various entities and individuals, in some cases, individuals received a check for attending meetings for which they were already being paid by their own entities, and that CDPHE has said that that is not allowed. Is that correct, Trish?
That is, and they have addressed that in this upcoming new contract for
Okay.
July 2020 to 21.
And as I also understand that we may have to de-obligate between $30,000 and $50,000 of money in this current contract that was inappropriately allocated.
Correct. Being that they gave us that additional quarter to get the fourth quarter, I won't have that exact number yet, but the money left right now is $58,000 after paying our Cynthia Ford, our contractor, for those 3 months. It will look somewhere between $30,000 and $50,000.
And when we say de-obligate, that means that either we have to forego receiving those funds, or if we've already received them, we'll have to return them to CDPHE.
Correct.
Thank you. Is there any more discussion on the HCC issues?
Okay, there was also something about the CDPHE asked us if we wanted to extend or have additional time on the contract. Was that, and that our department refused? Was that just on a portion of the grant, or what part was that on?
That was on the grant in its entirety, but essentially it would be for, at the time it was about 1 to 2 months ago, CDPHE reached out to Rio Grande Public Health and asked if, pretty much every county that has this grant, this is a grant that's worldwide, even East Coast has it. And with COVID, a lot of them are needing that extra time. About a month to 2 months ago, CDPHE reached out to Emily, and she said that we did not need the extension, and she would have all the money spent and work finalized by June 30th. Don't fully understand that because we hadn't even requested payments or done our quarterly since January at that time. But nonetheless, when I originally spoke to them, CDPHE, they said that that offer was already on the table and denied, but ultimately they did give us another quarter to complete the work.
Thank you. Also, for clarification, it's our based on what was said earlier in this conversation, that Tony Steffens' position at the time working under public health was to accomplish basically the accounting, the bookkeeping, and making sure the proper paperwork was sent in, but that she was dependent upon the public health director for that information and for approval. And lacking that, she was unable to submit any of these requests for reimbursements under the grant. And therefore, I believe it was mentioned in our last meeting that we had only received 7% of what we should have received as of the first quarter. And that Tony now is no longer working directly under public health, but is working under county administration for the purposes of making sure the grants are in compliance and that the funds are accounted for appropriately, and that we are submitting our reimbursement request to CDPHE, and then we're going to have an extension through September on portions of what we call the deliverables, those things that are mandated under the contract that Rio Grande County has with CDPHE.
Correct. And Tony is in the meeting in case you have any direct questions. Sorry, I didn't know if you realized that.
I did not, but I do see her up here. I don't have direct questions for Tony unless she has something to add to what we've already said.
I don't.
Thank you, Tony.
Yeah.
Any other discussion on this issue? If not, I would ask that Trish keep us closely informed as to the progress of this and how the correspondence is going with the Healthcare Coalition Steering Committee and Cynthia Ford, who is the grant coordinator. contracted by Rio Grande County. Is there anything else on this?
I do have a question. Is in this, were we saying, because I think it would be appropriate that at that special meeting that Cynthia was going to get together, that Ryan and Tony both be involved in that. And so questions can be answered from the grant standpoint as well as from the legal standpoint.
I can do that.
Thank you, Tony. Ryan?
Yeah, I'm fine with that.
Great, thank you. Is there any other discussion on this particular topic?
I don't have any.
Okay. If there is none, we'll move on then. I assume that covered both of those subpoints under Healthcare Coalition Grant. We'll move on then to the general discussion regarding COVID-19.
So I know the one thing that we just added to the agenda would be those contracts. So we have 3 contracts out of 5 returned, signed. So they will just need your signatures if you would like to approve those contracts.
Do we need commissioner action on this, or was it covered under our previous authorization with public health?
Well, they do have signature lines for commissioner, so that's why I put them in this meeting.
Okay, then for protocol purposes, I would say that we need to have a vote on that by the commissioners.
I would move that we approve the contracts for the additional contact tracing people.
So we have a motion. Do we have a second? Do we have a second from Commissioner Glover? Is there any other discussion or objections on approving the contracts for additional contact tracers? Hearing none, the motion carries. Also under general discussion regarding COVID-19, since we don't have it elsewhere on the agenda, South Fork has approached the commissioners asking for input into the variance request process going forward. I know that the governor is going to be issuing a Protecting Our Neighbors order that's phase 3 of the reopening of the state. And some of those issues or some of those requests are probably already addressed in his proposed guidelines. And in talking to Mineral County, they did get more relaxed standards, significantly more relaxed standards. However, they seem to be fairly consistent with what the governor's office is proposing. And in conversation with Dan Hicks from South Fork, I informed him that it looks like it's taken 2 to 3 weeks to get variance approvals. And so while we could submit a variance request, it probably wouldn't be approved until or before the governor issues his new guidelines. That left it kind of open and ambiguous. We can continue working on that. Commissioners, your thoughts on this?
I think we need to have the discussion is because he's asking for outdoor events up to 250 people. And there were, bingos.
Correct. Those were 2 main ones. Also, logger days, that'd be an outdoor event. Mineral County's variance approved outdoor gatherings of up to 250 people. That's also in line with what is the draft proposal from the governor coming forward. The issue of the parade, I think that's subject to interpretation because it's not like you have people in a stadium or really a confined area. In those parades, people just kind of line up along the street. Or in South Fork's case, most of the people are sitting in their front yards. We can have that discussion with Dan and see what South Fork would like to do. In the meantime, we probably ought to be thinking about our variance request, even though given the new cases that are appearing in the county, we probably need to think pretty hard about how we craft that request going forward. I guess that's basically it. We don't see any major outbreaks that I'm aware of in the county. We've kind of gotten through that one crisis, but I know there are pop-up cases taken in Monte Vista, for instance, and perhaps elsewhere that we're hearing about now, and that may have some bearing on our variance request. Can we take this up during the work session Monday?
I think so.
Yes. Gene, I'm having to flip screens here so I can see your thumbs up and stuff. Did you give a thumbs up? Okay. So the commissioners concur that we will discuss our variance request at the work session on Monday next. Okay. Is there anything else under general discussion regarding COVID-19?
I don't have anything.
Gene, was that okay? A head shake. Got you there. Thank you. Okay, then if there's nothing else, we'll move on to the unfinished business, which is the governing policy commissioner's goals. Have you had a chance to think about that or do any more work on it?
I think the things that I came up with were already on that list. You had a pretty complete list. The things that I felt were really important were the finishing up a bunch of the policies, the written portion. I guess the procedures have all been adjusted, but that we need to do the policies. And I am looking for that document real quick. And I know there were a couple other things that were already on the list that I felt were very important.
Okay.
Do you want me to send it to you real fast?
Yeah.
Okay, the only things that I had in addition to the list that was distributed, and we've discussed this, and some of them are almost in the micromanaging level, or they would lie under our administrator's authority. And we had cataloging and indexing our files. From the sounds of it, our file system over the past few years has become totally jumbled and confused, and we need to deal with that. The other was date stamping incoming mail. Again, that's an administrative function. Or staff can take care of that. We had an issue come up the other day where there was a question about when we had actually received a document that required a response, and we received the document after the response deadline. And so having a date stamp on that would have helped us when we were dealing with that issue. Those were the only other things that I had on the list that was printed out. Gene,
I know
go ahead. I'm sorry, Suzanne.
that the list you had to start with was pretty complete.
Okay. Gene, do you have, I see you're in the room there with Trish. Do you have comments?
All I was going to say was I just wanted to echo kind of off what Suzanne said about finishing up the policies and things. The list was very complete, other than a few personal things that we're working on individually, that we're going to continue to work on. I really don't have anything to add to it.
Oh, okay. I just got that. And another one of the things that I think is really important is to come up with a plan for the conservation trust funds, that we need to kind of have a direction that we want those to go in.
Okay, and we do have, what we have under that plan for conservation trust funds is assure projects are CTF eligible, because I know of at least 2 occasions in recent history where in one case we had to absorb an ineligible project that we had put under, or that had been put under conservation trust funds, And the other one took some, from what I understand, some serious negotiation between our administrator and DOLA, because the project as it stood and was funded was not eligible, but the administrator was able to show how it could qualify, and so we did not have to return those funds. And then the other thing is evaluate for countywide benefit. And that's something that we can decide how we want to do that going forward. As far as if you all are comfortable with the items that are on this list, and if you're comfortable with the body of the governing policy, which has not been changed since 2015, then we could deal with this near term in a regular board meeting. I defer to you all on the timing on this and to Trish.
I guess all we need to do is just approve it, isn't it? If everybody agrees on the goals, that everything else is just to be approved? Or is there something else that you're seeing that we need to do?
Well, in the previous years, what we've done is, if there was a specific project, let's say railroad, let's just pick that as an example, that one of the commissioners would be delegated the responsibility for kind of dealing with that specific goal. And so in the previous governing policies, there would be somebody's name there off to the side saying this person's working on that. It kind of gave an area of responsibility and a reporting authority.
Okay. Something else, I just looked back, and this was a typo that I corrected a couple years ago, and apparently it didn't stay corrected, is on page 3 under governance process. The last sentence says to see to it that Rio Grande County government achieves appropriate results for appropriate persons at inappropriate costs and avoids unacceptable actions and situations. I do believe that inappropriate is not the right word, that it should be at appropriate cost. Are you seeing what I'm looking at, John?
Yes, I am. I'm trying. You're right. That at a minimum, we need to change that word, and we may want to even rephrase that last sentence. I'm not sure. I'd have to think about it.
Because the word appropriate is used a lot, but at inappropriate cost is definitely not what we want.
Right. That's correct. Okay. When do we want to deal with this? Is this a work session item that would later on be confirmed? Or is it something we can do?
So the only other thing we have to do is to assign responsibilities on these?
As I see it, that's what I see. Gene, do you see anything else?
No, I think that's it. I think we just assign, put the ones on. That's what I was referring to about our own individual things. I know, like the railroad, for example, like you said, having it assigned or whatever, and we'll just sign them on there. That shouldn't be a big deal. So we could probably do that in a work session, fairly simple, and then ratify it in a meeting.
Okay. Trish, I haven't got a list of all the things we've loaded onto our Monday work session. Are we hitting our limit?
Yeah, we're pretty full. So we're going to be discussing the CARES Act funding with the municipalities, discussing getting a consultant for the airport. We are going to review the HCC representative and the South Fork variance. And then
Okay,
governing policy.
Right. And we have a chat from Lindsay about variances, and apparently she's picking up some word that CDPHE and state officials are doing away with variance requests. something we may want to check out. So that may be off the table going forward if the state is going to stop that program. Okay, so what's the consensus there? Do we want it on Mondays or do we want to defer it to a later date?
I think that's a discussion that we need to have in a work session because it's going to take a little bit of discussion on that. But it sounds like Monday is really full.
Is it the 29th?
Well, it just depends how much time you want to stay on Zoom on Monday, I guess.
I know, but can we set it for the 29th?
I could set it for the 29th if you like.
If that works for everybody.
I think that'd be okay.
Okay, and Gene, I take it you concur with that, since you were having a conversation with. That being the case, we will set this for our work session on Monday, the 29th. Okay, now let me find my agenda again. Commissioners and administrator updates. We have 2 there, and then I have 1 on the railroad. Audit update, that would be Trish.
Very mild update, just to let you know that it has begun. They are majorly delayed due to COVID. They are not coming on the premises of any county at all this year, so that is delaying it a bit. But we all are full force at this point.
Okay.
Just notification.
I see somebody logged on that's apparently riding on a satellite somewhere. Daniel, I like your background. Okay, the Tyler technology update.
So we are at the last stretch of Tyler. I have my login at this point. We still have a little bit more work to do, but we will have the budgetary and some financials up and running about a month from now, 30 days, and we are on schedule.
Very good. Okay. Then the one thing I wanted to bring forward, and Ryan, I may ask you to speak to this. We received notice from the bankruptcy trustee about a motion to be heard in front of the bankruptcy judge, and that they're talking about going to auction on the San Luis and Rio Grande Railroad in July. Am I reading that correctly, Ryan?
Correct. I believe that the hearing is set for July 1st and that through tomorrow, or maybe beginning tomorrow, I'm sorry, the trustee will begin soliciting bids. And then it is set for a hearing on July 1st for Judge McNamara in the U.S. Bankruptcy Court to approve the sale of that property. So I think when we spoke last, I was under the impression that we were looking at maybe a September date by which a sale would occur. And it appears to me now that this is a more expedited time frame than anyone was contemplating a week ago, or at least that I was. And I know my advice had been to maybe meet as a San Luis Valley Board of County Commissioners to try to find out if there was some uniform direction and message that we wanted to convey, particularly in the form of an objection to the sale of the railroad assets, because there was concern, I think there continues to be concern, that the bankruptcy trustee in contemplating this sale is not taking into account some of the local public interest that affect the Valley counties. And so I don't know what the time frame is for the next San Luis Valley Board of County Commissioners, but there has been ongoing correspondence between the county attorneys locally to try to find out what approach would be best in terms of either objecting or stating a position on the local public interest.
Okay. Also, Ryan, on that, you're saying they're going to start the bidding process on July 1st based on this document?
Start the bidding process on June 19th, I believe.
Okay. So we don't really have much time if we're going to weigh in on this at all.
Right. I think we would want to make sure that there's transparency in terms of what those bids are at the time of the July 1st hearing, and certainly try to have some representation for the Valley counties at that hearing.
Okay, not much time there. I have not been in touch with the bankruptcy petitioner's attorney or any of the petitioners for several weeks now. I haven't seen any correspondence on this. I can give them a call and see if anything's going on that we're not aware of at this point, what their positions are. Obviously, we have a deep concern that we have our claim asserted strongly for the taxes that are owed to the counties, specifically in this case, Rio Grande County. And secondly, that the public interest is served. I know there are several potential bidders out there, but the fact that we're not at the table to even suggest to the trustee that we have certain things that we would like to have considered in the bid, certain terms and conditions. And so, Ryan, I know your time is limited. I'll make myself available for anything that we need to discuss and to think about going forward. So I'll leave that to you to let me know what to do.
Okay. What I'm going to suggest is maybe I'll speak with Jason Kelly and Nick Sarmiento, but I think obviously well prior to the 1st, if there's a possibility of setting up maybe a Zoom with the county commissioners to try to consolidate a position and represent the public interest on behalf of the Valley to the trustee or directly to the bankruptcy court, that we do so fairly quickly.
I would suggest also that you contact the Huerfano County attorney.
Sure.
They are the largest tax creditor in this whole melee.
Sure.
Okay, thank you, Brian.
Yeah, and on that note, I just wanted to reassure the commissioners that we have already filed our claim. I believe, I'm just working off memory here, but the bankruptcy court set a deadline for filing any additional proofs of claim of August 20th. I'll verify that date, but I want to get with the treasurer, and I think the other counties would as well, to see if there have been any additional taxes or interest that should perhaps require amendment of the claims that have been filed, and that we do so prior to the 20th, so we maximize what our return would be on that.
Thank you, Ryan. Give me a call or get a hold of me, email me if you have any other thoughts. Okay. Any other questions on the railroad issue in front of us today? If not, back to my agenda. Are there any other commissioner or administrator updates?
I don't have anything.
I'm looking over, just a minute, Gene. Are you saying yes or no? Your thumbs up. We're good to go. Okay. That sounds good. Is there anything else before the body?
I did want to clarify one thing. It's kind of old business, but I guess could potentially be new business depending on how we look at it. The last week on Wednesday's meeting, the Board of Health approved a variance to the OWTS for specific application in Jasper. It was later brought to my attention that previous boards of health have approved variance requests by way of a resolution. I opined that it makes sense to kind of maintain that consistency in practice. And I do have a draft of, or a copy of a previous resolution that was recorded. Would you like for me to draft that as an action item for the board to pass a resolution for that particular Jasper variance that the board has already voted to approve?
Suzanne?
I think so, is that if that's what we need to do, then we need to do it.
Gene, thumbs up.
Okay, so I will do that. I will say it's not required anywhere in either Title 25 or the Reg 43. However, I see some benefit in at least having a historical record as well as maintaining consistency in our practice. I will say that in terms of the prior practice, this resolution of the Rio Grande County Board of Health, the one I'm looking at is 2016. And it says in here that it's Rio Grande County Board of County Commissioners acting as the Board of Health. And so while back in 2016, there were additional board members on the Board of Health, by the verbiage of this resolution, there were times where the Rio Grande County Board of County Commissioners acted solely as the Board of Health. Despite that kind of hybrid model that existed. This is signed by Carla Shriver, chair. So I think that was probably a little bit of a sloppy practice that I think that, at least in terms of the way this board does things, this board sits as the Board of County Commissioners and as the Board of Health. So it maybe alleviates itself of those concerns. But I just want to make sure that people are aware that I don't want to follow exactly everything that was done before, because there were errors in the way things were done before. And it seems that sometimes the Board of County Commissioners was acting as a Board of Health. Sometimes the Board of Health was a separate body. And this is a problematic practice that we've identified over the past couple of years, and we have tried to correct. And I don't intend to continue that practice. So I'll get off my soapbox right now, but that was definitely a problem that was occurring.
Thank you for the sermon, Ryan. No, that helps. It does help. Speaking of that, I see we had a request from Randy Kern from the building department about a letter regarding this particular variance request, so he would have comfort going forward. Do we need to do a letter now so they can proceed, or do we wait for the variance?
I would think that the resolution in and of itself would provide Randy with what he needs. I'll confirm that with Randy to see if he needs anything in addition. But otherwise, I'll have that variance resolution prepared for Wednesday's meeting. And if we can get that on the agenda for approval, I think that should give Randy everything he needs.
Thank you. I don't want to drag this out interminably, but a couple of other issues that have come up. The fair, the San Luis Valley Fair, they've been waiting to hear to see what State Fair Board was going to do. State Fair Board says they are going to do like the youth show and sale. They're gonna, I don't know what else they're gonna do, but that may have influence over what our San Luis Valley Fair does. But I have been approached by the president of the Fair Board asking for any encouragement and help that they can get from the county commissioners to facilitate having the fair in the valley this year. I understand that they're considering moving the indoor exhibits over to one of the churches in town that has large space for that, because it appears that the town of Monte Vista has gone ahead and ordered the building at this point, the materials for the building, and the demolition date is yet uncertain, which brings me to another issue, and this is just basically an administrative one, but I wanted to advise the commissioners. The Monte Vista Rotary has a gun show every year, and they've been holding it in the Sky High building, which may not be there by gun show time, and they've requested to rent the McMillan building for the purposes of having that show. And I think it's just an administrative item, and the administration office handles those kinds of requests and rentals and what have you. But that will take place the last weekend in October. Something else that's coming before us is possible change to the Gallagher Amendment. We're getting quite a bit of correspondence from CCI. To date, it seems like it's only special districts that are trying to put this on the ballot to get relief from Gallagher. I don't know the details on that. one of the things we discussed before, but I haven't heard resolution on, is posting the current COVID numbers on Facebook. Trish, do you know if anything's happened yet?
I haven't, I don't.
Okay, is that something that needs to be pursued?
Yeah, I would say so.
Okay, how do we go about doing that?
I can look into it and get back to you.
Thanks. I'm not pressuring you. It's one of those things that was mentioned, talked about, and then kind of went silent on it. Another, with the fire over at East Canyon, our emergency manager, Art Whitner, is probably going to be deployed over there. He has coverage for Rio Grande County. I believe it's Chris Rodriguez from Castilla County. And Dave Osborne said that, yes, they could use the help from Art. And also it would be a great learning experience for Art to see how these different fire agencies and all work together in these events. We can tell that fire is burning nicely based on all the smoke that we have in the county today. The other thing that we've talked about, and I don't know if we want to do anything, we've talked about if we continue with the Zoom meetings, better technology for that, and the technology that I've been apprised of that seems to be working good for a couple of other entities in the valley is a system called OWL, which allows, which is a device that sits on a table that will turn to whoever is speaking, and that their picture will show on the Zoom meeting screens, and it's a directional microphone. And that takes care of the issue of trying to set up some sort of camera somewhere in the room that shows the whole room. A system cost about $800. I sent a link to Trish on that. I don't know if it was a good link or not. It's something to consider. Alamosa City is using a different system, but in a conversation with them last week, it sounded like the OWL system would have been better for their purposes, but they bought something else. So we have that issue, or no, we have that possibility. The DRG, Development Resources Group, is going to go to that system, and they said it is COVID reimbursement eligible for the Zoom meetings. We can look into that if you're interested. That's just information. The other thing is, where are we on the collaborative agreements on the COVID virus relief fund?
We have the work session on Monday. I
Okay,
have received numbers from Forrest and Dan Hicks.
thank you.
So Monte Vista and South Fork only.
Okay. Then do we know if the Del Norte City Council approved the MOU on the soccer field property? Did they actually do that last week?
They did. I have copies. I forwarded them to Ryan
Okay,
with their signatures.
all right. Thank you. Next steps on that, Trish, you have any idea what we're doing next? Just negotiating with D Mountain at this point?
You have to finish the conversations with D Mountain, and
Okay.
that's about it.
Very good. Okay, I've exhausted everybody here. I'm done. Does anybody else have anything?
I don't.
I gotta look over here at Gene. Give me a second while I find the arrow. You don't have anything, Gene. Thank you. Okay. I wish you'd get over on the same page as Suzanne so I could see you both together. All
Do we have-
right. Do we need?
I was
Yes,
gonna,
Suzanne.
I think
Or
you're
Trish, who was
fixing to
that?
ask the same question I was.
Executive session question? Is
Yeah.
that what you were gonna ask?
I thought you were gonna forget it.
Okay. You have no confidence in me, but you asked the question, do we need an executive session today for anything?
I think that, we could have one personnel executive session. It also could wait. That would be up to your timing,
Ryan, or are you aware of
how
anything?
you feel.
I'm not aware of anything that would require an executive session on my end. And I'm not familiar with the personnel issue. So I can't take a position on that.
So Trish, are you comfortable waiting until a later date for the personnel issue?
It is nothing pressing whatsoever.
Okay. Then, hearing that, we can dispense with the executive session on the agenda today. Is there anything else before somebody makes a motion to adjourn?
I have one, I guess, question for Ryan. Eva is asking for a copy of the video for at least this meeting, possibly more. Does that need to go by an official Quora request?
Well, actually, under the Sunshine Act, the Open Meetings Law, the minutes are the official record. Have to be prepared and promptly recorded. But that is the official record that she would, if she wants access to it. This meeting, even though it's recorded, subject to disclosure. The recording of this meeting, I should say.
Ryan, would you say it again? I missed it.
So the official record of any public meeting is the minutes. And so that's why we have a clerk who is diligently typing up minutes, and it goes through an approval process to make sure there are no typos or whatever. But once the minutes are recorded, they're supposed to be open for inspection, and that is the record that the public is required or entitled to access, not this particular meeting Zoom recording that is being made right now.
But if somebody does record this meeting, are there any restrictions on it?
It would only be released by way of a court order. And that's not necessarily an attempt to obstruct anyone. I mean, that's meetings taking place in public and business is being conducted in the open, but that's essentially the law, that anything that goes beyond the minutes would have to be by way of a court order.
Okay, I know the town of Monte Vista live streams and records their meetings on, I don't know, YouTube or some channel like that. Is there anything that prohibits us from letting people have access to the proceedings here?
There would be nothing that would specifically prohibit you. I can imagine, though, that could become, if it's not just the general course of business, that you air your meetings on some form of either social media or sharing platform, that it could be time consuming and somewhat prohibitive for the county administrator to have to repeatedly respond to these requests and send out large files, electronic files. So that would be my concern, is just more from a personnel perspective, and conserving our resources when the minutes are available.
Okay, but there's no statute or case law to guide us on that.
I'm sorry, what was that, John?
Is there any case law or statute to guide us on that you're aware of?
Yeah, that's squarely within Title 24, Article 6.
Okay, thank you. Thank you. Is there anything else? Well, it's up to you guys to make a motion about this meeting. We did get a question here from Eva. Does the County Board of Commissioners abide by state bylaws? Ryan, I'm going to let you respond to that.
I'm not sure what state bylaws she's referring to. There's state statute. There are a number of statutes that specifically pertain to counties. I mean, I don't mean to sound disrespectful, but I'm not inclined to send you every statute that pertains to counties, because that would frankly take me a week to do so. There are a number of statutes, all found within titles, I guess primarily found within titles 25, title 30, and title 24.
And that's available online if somebody wants to go search the state statutes.
Absolutely. You could look at Colorado Supreme Court's website. You could look at findlaw.com. But the statutes, and again, that's not all encompassing, because elsewhere in the probate code, in the human services code, all under, those are 14 and 26, there are specific statutes that pertain to county commissioners, but those that primarily pertain to county functions or board of health functions or state functions are Titles 30, Titles 24, and Title 25.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay. Is there anything else? Unmute, Suzanne, so we can hear what you're actually saying.
I said I don't have anything.
Okay, do we want to adjourn this meeting?
I think I made that motion a while ago, but I'll make it again.
I think you were muted, but maybe you weren't. I don't know. We've got a second up there. Commissioner Glover seconds the motion to adjourn. Any objections or other comments before we adjourn? Hearing none, we stand adjourned. Thank you, everybody, for participating.